Welcome everyone to the NeoSystems Coffee Break series on NeoFlow. NeoFlow is our standardized pre-built best practice workflow solution that builds on Neo's expertise in system integration through the Integrify workflow tool. So back in mid-July, we started this series. So all the way through to mid-September, we're going to be discussing each of the 9 workflow applications that the NeoSystems BPI team has developed. And in case you can't attend any of the other sessions, or if you haven't been able to get to any of them so far, make sure you look for the recordings out on our website. If you'd like a direct link, just post it to the Q&A and we'll make sure we get that to you. For reference, we've covered so far payables, so the accounts payable process, AR through billing, vendor maintenance, vendor ratings, employee management. Today, we're going to be talking about journal entry approval, and financial statement approval, employee workforce, and travel authorization are the 3 left after today. My name is Marty Herbert. I'm the Senior Director for the BPI team, and today we're joined by Matt Yinger. Good morning.
Morning, Marty. Good to be here. Good to be here with you and all our attendees this morning.
Awesome. So as our audience is learning, NeoFlow is really all about standardizing the processes, right? So whether it's payables and billing and all of those, but each flow really provides a great baseline of best practice tasks to use as is out of the box, or even to take what's already there and really kind of leaning on a lot of NeoSystems experience to then configure it further to handle those specific items that may be giving them and each of our clients the most problems. So if you haven't been here before, again, make sure check out the other links to our other recordings, but we're going to go ahead and jump right into journal entry today. So Matt, as we're talking about journal entry approvals, what is your first thought when dealing with journal entries, and especially in relation to this NeoFlow?
Journal entries. I mean, I think Costpoint does that. that's about my professional exposure to journal entries. I don't work necessarily on that kind of side of the house, so I'm thinking, I guess Costpoint does that. But like, it's journal entries are kind of one of those things where you save it, it kind of is written off to whatever database it's stored in, and that's kind of that until you need to do some more. So, I mean, as far as data goes, it may not be the most ideal as far as making sure you have the world's cleanest data and all of that.
Yeah, and I know one of the big reasons that we even kind of targeted the journal entry approval process initially was this idea, like you said, with the information. As soon as you put it into Costpoint, you push the button and it's there, right? It's then sitting in the database. So I've seen a lot of clients, and I know a lot of the ones that we've built in the past. A lot of the data in that journal entry staging in those database tables ends up in reporting in one way or another, because oops, we forgot a flag that says only posted or unposted or whatever. So really, thinking about the NeoFlow itself, how does that workflow for journal entry approval address kind of what we saw as the shortcomings in Costpoint and those types of things, and really kind of walk us through what does that process look like and what does the process itself do?
Sure, absolutely. So the nice thing about this process is that it's, number one, it kind of takes you out of the Costpoint database and puts you in a more, at least in my opinion, a more user-friendly sort of interface and ability to do what you want to do in layman's terms, basically. So you can choose between 3 options. You can choose to create a new journal entry, you can copy a previous journal entry, or you can actually also replace an unposted journal entry too. So if you have one that you're looking to replace, you can do that natively as well. So when you create a new journal entry, you're selecting a period, you decide whether or not it's billable, whether or not it's reversible. You enter line items and you attach any supporting documentation that you may need, and you hit submit, ready for approval. Pretty simple. For copying a previous one, there's a search box on our form that you can use to pull up a previous journal entry, and it will populate the form, with all of the information from it, from period, who it was entered by, the line items associated, all of that stuff. You can copy that if you want to use it as a template to, change a couple of things for a new journal entry. You can use that as well. And then, you attach supporting documentation, submit that on for approval as well. The last one, where you replace an unposted journal entry, you do the same kind of thing as copying, where you search for and select the unposted journal entry. And it pulls in all that same information with period and line items, who created it, and all of that. And then you have the ability to make changes to that as needed, to write in a new journal entry to replace that one. So effectively, it takes care of the three biggest needs that we tend to see for journal entries, is just adding a new one as kind of like an as normal basis, copying an existing one if, say, there's a similar one that you need to use as a template, or just replacing an unposted journal entry outright with perhaps a correct one. And so once that request process is done, it moves on to approval. And approvals, they can be pretty much as custom as you want them to be. We have the ability to create whatever approval chain you want based on whatever thresholds or maybe org chart that you have. I know I've implemented, I don't know how many different kinds of approval chains at this point. But I mean, if you want, one approver or 5, or, however many, depending on maybe a financial threshold, or depending on who is requesting it and things like that, we have the ability to dynamically and statically define who is approving these requests as well. So once the approver or approvers get the request, they can either provide their approval to go via web service into Costpoint and create a new journal entry, replace an old one if necessary, or copy an old one. But also they can send it back to the requester with any rework comments that they have. And I've found that, especially when I'm implementing this new system and I'm trying to facilitate some change management within the organization I'm working with, that it goes a long way for the ability of the approver to provide those comments to the requester, so that they can really detail what they're looking for with each request, so that, they do 1 or 2 or 3 requests, and then, they kind of understand what their approvers are looking for, so that they can go in, do what they need to do, and do it right the first time. Really speeds things up. So once the journal entry looks like it needs to, we go and shoot it off via web service into Costpoint. Costpoint, depending on which action you wanted to take in your request, either deletes an old journal entry, if necessary, or adds, or just adds a new journal entry into Costpoint automatically via web service. Obviously, for ones where we are replacing an unposted one, we do both. So we go in and first we delete the old one, and then it goes in and adds the new one. All that is done automatically via web services from our application into Costpoint that we, have developed and we deploy for you within your environment. And that's kind of the process, afterwards, we have a notification that we can, send to whomever and include any request detail and information, make it look however you want. That includes, request data, to confirm that it was posted. Maybe you want a separate one to confirm that one was accurately replaced, indicating that the old journal entry was deleted and the new one was uploaded. We can kind of slice and dice it however you want. but just to provide that sort of certification that what you were looking for to be done regarding the journal entry has been completed. And that's kind of the process. It's pretty cut and dry, but it's effective to take care of what we have determined to be the 3 most commonly used journal entry actions.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, the rundown of really what that process looks like is I'm sure helps a lot, and especially in our audience to kind of understand what we're looking at. So, and I want to go back for a second. So adding, I mean that, like you said initially, like, well, Costpoint does that, right? Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the reasons that I know we built in the other 2, right, the copy and the replace, was because that's what we were hearing a lot of, right?
Yeah.
The idea that I have a lot of the same types of journal entries that are happening all the time, and and sometimes they're just similar, right? Sometimes it's the same thing that I'm buying, it's the same entry that I'm making. They're just similar, but I need to change some things. I need to copy them. But I know one of the reasons that we went down the path of replacing was what we heard from our clients about this idea that we have journal entries that are sitting out there in unposted status in Costpoint that are just languishing, and yeah, we can go back into Costpoint and clean those up and everything and kind of get rid of them. But I know one of the big benefits of this was really taking the need to reverse these errant unposted journal entries and virtually eliminating that, right? So when we talk about the process, and adding the different approvers, and a lot of the time we talk about process efficiency, making it better, faster, stronger, those types of things. But I think, this one's a little bit different, right? This one's a little bit more about data integrity and that kind of thing too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ability to just automatically replace maybe a bad journal entry or to copy a good one and push something through with a couple of changes. Like, for example, maybe when your firm is, getting additional work computers, and maybe instead of getting them on Windows 8, you started getting them on Windows 10. So you copy the Windows 8 one and you enter in some new information regarding Windows 10 and submit that one. So that way, when you need to do more, you can just copy the Windows 10 one now. It makes it a lot more intuitive for users to do the right thing each time. And like you were saying about those languishing journal entries just kind of sitting out there in data purgatory, it kind of eliminates that because it only allows the stuff that has been fully approved to get through in the first place. So if something is, entered in Costpoint, but it hasn't been approved for a long time, and maybe the approver goes in, sees something that needs to be done, but is being dragged in 17 different directions, like we all experience each day, then they say, oh, I'll come back to it in an hour when I'm done with what I'm doing, and they just don't. And things just kind of sit out there. And so this kind of prevents that by making sure that approvers see things in a timely fashion. We can set reminders for them as well in order for them to provide their approval, in order to make sure that journal entries are actually getting pumped out of this thing too. As far as further like data integrity goes, I mean, all of your journal entries are now also in one spot. So the ability to submit all kinds of journal entries from the same point makes it a lot easier on your existing and much easier on new employees as well. So that way you can just let them know. So for journal entries, you just go here. It doesn't matter what it's for. It doesn't matter who it needs to go to for approval. It just goes here. You submit your request and it's just kind of taken care of from there. You don't need to worry about tracking it if you don't want to. Those who have a task will be notified and will be reminded if they need to be about it. So it keeps things a little bit more, it keeps things a little bit easier for those working directly with the system as well.
Well, and I think it also, I know we keep talking about, it keeps it easier and it keeps it, keeps it going and all of that. And I think that's part of the reason that NeoFlows themselves being built in Integrify, Integrify is capturing all that data, right? All the data that would normally be left in emails and those types of things is now being captured in the process output in what's called the request detail in the system. It really gives us who did what when, so it gives us the complete audit trail of that journal entry too. And I know when we talk about, kind of, well, we can do it all in one place and somebody just kind of comes here. So who? I mean, we don't want to, we don't want to necessarily just say, hey, here you go, everybody, anybody wants
Right.
to do a journal entry, let's go ahead and do that today. So, who would normally kick off this process?
Right, absolutely. And so, the nice thing about the Integrify system is you can lock down whatever processes you want to whomever you want to. You can create certain process groups that have the ability to start these requests, and lock down approval to only certain people that have the ability to approve, whether it's based on a certain financial threshold for number of approvals, who is requesting it, kind of based on your org chart, whatever you want to do really. The system will make sure that those that approve these requests, as well as those who get in and start them, are only the people that you want to. So, you won't have, me starting a request and writing a journal entry because I want to go get a master's somewhere, just because I want to. So, you have the ability to lock down that process and that level of permission.
Yeah, and just because somebody can start the request, again, thinking about the process itself keeps the gates in place, right? Keeps all those
Right.
approvers and things like that. I know you mentioned, you mentioned organizational approvers and that kind of thing. So how are the approvers handled in the system? I mean, I know there's the standard, but knowing that this is something that a lot of people will configure beyond that, how do we handle the approvers?
Yeah, sure. So like, as far as approvers go, I mean, basically, if you can think it, we can probably do it. I've seen some really simple ones where it's, if it, like, your first approver is this person for everything, and then if it's, over a certain dollar threshold, then it's this person, and then if it's over another dollar threshold, it's this person, and that kind of thing. Or if you have kind of a, approval matrix that you want to pull from based on, the org that the requester belongs to, or the category of items that they're procuring. Maybe you have a certain set of people who approve certain types of procurements and stuff like that. So we can kind of slice and dice it however you want to. We can assign approvers dynamically based on category or org or financial threshold, or any other really piece of data that you can come up with. Or if it's the way you do it in your organization, where you just have, approver 1 is this position, approver 2 is the next position, approver 3 is the next position, that's fine too. We can do that equally as easily.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, we're not, because it's not like we're losing the Costpoint side of this, right? I mean, we're still, we're still pulling projects and accounts and orgs, and if there is a relationship somewhere in there, I know we can kind of, look at what is the other data associated with that. If it goes to this group of projects, if it goes to this PAG, then hey, maybe we need to pull in this group of people to approve these types of things. So, again, NeoFlow being standardized, kind of best practices over the numerous years that NeoSystems has been doing doing journal entries for all of our clients. Now that it's standardized, how long does this particular NeoFlow usually take to get up and running?
Well, this one is, given the nature of it, and that, really the most customizable thing you're talking about here is going to be your approval chain, really. So, how many approvers you want, who gets assigned, which, once we have the information, we can just kind of take it and run. So, probably a week max to get it up and running. It's it's an import, it's a configuration within your environment. It's a web service deployment as well, two of them, actually, two web services, to configure an interface with your Costpoint environment. And then it's setting up your approvers, run a couple of test requests, and we all go drink some wine.
There you go.
It's pretty easy to get up and running quickly, and without something that requires too much rework after testing, since journal entry is something that everybody has to do. So we tried our best to make it easy, and alleviate some of the to-dos on the user, and just let the web services do their thing, and make sure that every piece of data that needs to come through comes through accurately and effectively.
Yeah. So, I know I'm going to turn to the audience for a second and just remind you, if you do have any questions, make sure you put them in that Q&A section. We'll answer them here in a second. So it really sounds like, just to kind of summarize, we're talking about maintaining control of the process. I mean, that's big. I mean, especially with remote work and those types of things. Now you can't just pop over the next cubicle over and say, hey, by the way, can you approve this for me? So I know it's talking about control and documentation, which the auditors love, and really maintaining that that audit trail and compliance with the approvals that are set up. And in the meantime, providing that additional functionality, providing kind of the other pieces of the process that maybe normally are, again, languish over an email, and oops, we forgot to add them into whatever other documentation. What else? I mean, is there anything else that we just didn't cover? I didn't ask, or that our audience definitely needs to know about?
Well, one of my favorite things about working with Integrify and their web services is that coming into my position, and learning about Integrify and all of its functionality and all the different task types, web services was pretty much the task type where I threw up my hands and said, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to deal with it. So whenever a web service failed, I was always like tapping the shoulder of somebody next to me, trying to figure out what went wrong, until somebody graciously pointed out that web services and Integrify will tell you exactly what went wrong with your request. So if you have a certain field that has too many characters in it, for example, that Costpoint won't accept, it will come back and tell you that so-and-so field would be truncated because it has too many characters for the allowable field size. It'll also do the same thing for restricted characters. Maybe if you use a vendor that doesn't exist in Costpoint, it'll tell you that. So it's a very easy and straightforward way of standardizing how these get done in Integrify, also in Costpoint, basically to ensure that it'll look exactly as it should in Costpoint, so that everything comes through in a standardized, repeatable way.
Yeah, so not losing the Costpoint functionality that everybody, most likely everybody on the call has spent a lot of time building up this Costpoint functionality to make sure that it is supposed to do the way it's supposed to.
Oh yeah, that's not going away.
Yeah, and then relying on that is really key. So that's a great point. Web services are really kind of the name of the game for a lot of the NeoFlows, especially at the end of these processes. And again, just making sure that everything up to that point is also not lost in the fray too.
Right.
So looking over at our Q&A section, I'm not seeing any questions. So kind of last chance, if you have any burning questions about the journal entry process, what it can do for you, those types of things. But in the meantime, I definitely will make sure to remind everybody that we do have a couple more of these coming up. So if the idea of journal entry approvals, it was one of those things that got you real excited and wanted you to and made you want to attend today, we are going to be talking about financial statement approval. Again, one of our big three, right? The big three that we use internally are going to be our billing, our financial statement approvals, and then our payables process. Journal entry being the very close fourth one for us right now, that a lot of people are starting to turn to us for. So, we've got financial statement approval coming up next week, and then again after that, employee workforce and travel authorization. So I invite everybody to attend our next coffee talk, same place, same time. And in the meantime, wish everybody a great productive day and enjoy the rest of it.
Thanks very much.